Okay, thank you for joining us for this subject on just our top efficient farms. Um, since 2004, we've been following this group of operations to see, originally we were looking to see if small farms could survive because we knew there were these operations that existed within our averages that were very efficient and had high net incomes even through some tough times. When we selected these farms, we were looking for farms that had a net farm income ratio of greater than 20% for a 3-year period. So what we were looking for was that net farm income ratio measures what percentage of gross is retained as net. And it really shows us those operations that make good use of every dollar of gross income comes in. We do try and keep these farms, the same farms year in and year out, and so that we can have a consistent look, not just the farms that have the highest net farm income ratio for this year, but we're looking at farms that are consistently efficient as we go through time. There is very little livestock representation in this, and you'll see this in some of the numbers. And it's not that a livestock operation can't be an efficient operation, but because of the way our program handles feeder livestock purchase as an expense, it by nature drops the net farm income ratio. So this is mostly crop operations. There is a little bit of cow-calf thrown in there, but for the most part, these are crop operations. The farms do have a similar geographic spread across Nebraska as our average group. It includes both dryland and irrigated operations in all 4 of our regions. And so we feel we have a pretty good comparison there as well. These farms have traditionally carried less debt, although in the last 2 years we've seen that debt rise in these operations as well, and actually the interest expense ratio has become higher for the top efficient farms in 2013, 14, and 2015. So that's a little bit different than what we were seeing in these farms 10 years ago. So if we jump in here just a little bit and look at net farm income ratio, or this is the total net farm income, you can see the efficient farms are the green and the all farms are the yellow. So we're consistently seeing these farms outperform the average, following the same general trend, but do see some pretty big gap differences in 2012. We'll see what caused that as we get to a corn price chart here later. And we can see a narrowing in 2014. And again, remember that if we look at our total averages, 2014 was a good year because there was such a great year for livestock operations. And while we saw a 55% decrease in net farm income for crop operations between 2013 and 2014, we saw a 50% increase for livestock operations, so they came out the same. So if we were comparing these top efficient group to just the crop onlys, we probably wouldn't see that narrowing in 2014. But we did see that gap widen again in 2015. Again, these farms are not doing anything miraculous about creating income where there isn't any, but they are consistently getting more income each year out of their farm. This one shows gross farm income, and so you can see that the average and the top efficient for about since 2009 have been pretty consistently the same. Prior to 2009, the top efficient group were all smaller operations, but they've taken that profitability and grown those into larger farms that are now pretty comparable with the whole state as far as how much they're bringing in and still continuing to have more left as net farm income. If we look at corn price receipt, again, we can find the same trend if we looked at soybeans or any of the other crops. But this one, to me, again, other than 2012, which is where we saw that wide margin in net farm income, that's also the only year we see a significant price difference between the two groups. And it's amazing that we could go this long a time stretch and not have very much change between the two groups at all, except for that 1 year. So one thing we can definitely say about this study is that this top efficient group does not do a better job marketing their crops, and that's not where they're making up money. At the same time, this is a dryland corn yield comparison. Again, we use dryland because not all the operations have irrigation potential. So this is their one constant comparative factor. And you can see that there's some yield benefit to the top efficient group, but most years we're talking about a bushel or two per acre. Nothing terribly significant year in and year out that we're seeing huge differences there. If we break down some of the costs and look into this, this is a seed cost per acre trend. This is one where the efficient group, again, the yellow, or the green line is the efficient group, has been a little bit less, other than 2009 and 2014, where they pretty much narrowed. The top efficient group has always spent less on seed than their average counterpart. Fertilizer is a little bit more all over the board. For the last couple of years, we have looked at some of these numbers and wondering if the top efficient group really still applies, because their fertilizer costs had exceeded. If we look at chemicals, we'll see the same thing. One thing I thought was very interesting as we came to 2015's number was how wide of a gap we have between the top efficient and all farms. Like, for example, here on fertilizer, we're talking over $20 an acre that the top efficient group had been spending in 2014, and now they're less than all groups. And it makes me think that these top efficient producers were willing to spend more when the crop price was giving them reason to do it, or when spending an extra $20 an acre for fertilizer was getting them a guaranteed return or a likely return more than that. And now that that return that's coming back is less, they're backing off how much fertilizer they're applying. See the same thing here with chemicals. We've seen that number just a little bit lower, but kind of bouncing around with that top efficient, with the whole state group. Crop insurance, I'm not sure we can draw any conclusion from that the efficient operations are doing anything dramatically different. A couple of years, 2012, 2014, 2015 certainly see some pretty big gaps, but 11 and 13, 8, all those years are pretty much the same. So it will be interesting to see as we move forward if the top efficient group continues to hold their crop insurance costs down a little bit. One thing about carrying less debt is they do have the ability to bring that crop insurance cost down because their risk is not as high. So that one will be interesting to watch as we move forward a couple more years of tighter margins. If we look at total cost per acre, again, we switch back to irrigated corn here, but this is total cost per acre. The green is the top efficient group. The purple is the average of all farms. And you can see that consistently, the average is spending more per acre than the top efficient group. And you can see that margin's widened a little bit. My next slide actually shows the margin difference. So this is the dollars difference per acre in that irrigated corn. So in 2015, there was $130 an acre difference between what the average of the top efficient farms was and the average of all farms. And so that's a pretty significant difference when we're looking at multiplying that times 1,000 acres and being able to maximize some profit there. You can see that there's been variability. 2009 was a pretty narrow year, but otherwise we would be looking at somewhere upside of $50 an acre difference consistently through year to year. If we break that down and look at per acre costs, you can see that last year the top efficient farms did do a little bit better pricing their crop. So we were at $375 versus $359. A little bit better on yield, about 4 bushels to the acre. And then we get to expenses are fairly similar. But it's just little things that start to add up and make a difference. When we get to the bottom, we have a net return of $93 an acre versus $20 an acre, or a net return of 42 cents per bushel, or 9 cents for the average. So when we narrow down to just cash rented land on irrigated, we're not seeing as big a significant difference in the expenses as we are the income side of things. A little bit different on soybeans, where price was actually lower for the top efficient group, yield was fairly consistent, but cost is where we were able to make up some difference here. Almost $20, $25 an acre difference between gross expenses, making the difference between a profit and a loss situation for soybeans. That's just a quick touch on our top efficient group. There's always lots to look at and get involved there. We have a separate book available that goes into more detail with more crops on our top efficient that's available on our website to be ordered for members. Just give our office a call and let us know if you'd like a copy of that. We'd be happy to send one out to you. If you have any other questions, please give us a call or shoot us an email at info@nfbi.net. Thanks.